My guest today is Simon Elliott. Simon is a professional supervisor, which is how we met, because we were both doing some professional development as supervisors for people in ministry. And he's also an Anglican minister and has been for the last 20 years. He's got quite some background of multiple locations and churches that he's been ministering at in Melbourne and in Sydney. And you alluded, Simon, to there have been ups and downs. How about we start with the ups? What have been some of the greatest joys for you in being a leader within the Anglican Church?
Oh, look, I've had the great joy of ministering to people from cradle to grave. I think just that opportunity to be in communities was wonderful to be ministering. And when I say ministering, I mean to be serving people, to be in a relationship with people within the church and people outside of the church. Sometimes the relationships are easier with the people who are outside of the church. They usually have lower expectations of me than sometimes within the church.
A real thing, isn't it? The expectations.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to talk more about that when it comes to perhaps the downs.
Yeah, sure.
But if you want to go there,
no, that's all right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting that I think sometimes when talking about the expectations, people who are outside of church have pretty low expectations of the minister. So I know that, this year I've done a funeral and a baptism and a wedding for people who are largely not inside the church. And I think people are often shocked at the ability to do public speaking and to take on do the sort of things that we do in those situations. And there is a reality where public speaking is a pretty surprising skill, and society at large, like a large percentage of people are pretty fearful of that.
Yes, they are. Yes. My previous business actually some years ago was called Speaking Matters, and I used to train people in public speaking. And some of it was about, their diction or how they came across or the crafting of their message. But most of it was about stress management and overcoming fears.
Yeah. So, look, it's been a great journey and a difficult journey. It's been great to be in a relationship. And when I say difficult, sometimes the difficulty is that we have moved. So fortunately, my family has come with me each time, but there's great hurt felt when we leave a community that we've given our lives to. And there's just a reality where you can't maintain and continue on those relationships where you've done life with people for years, and you just can't keep up all those friendships. And they are friendships. They are, it's a different sort of friendship when you're the minister, but it's real, and it hurts to walk away from that. But you walk into another church and there are similar expectations of doing life with people there. So you run out of hours in the week.
Yes, and stamina and energy. And you've shared with me, and you might want to share with the listeners that you have a big family as well. So there's just your need to be there for the family as a priority. So it's very hard for you to be stretched so thin to be there for everyone else that then you're not there for your family.
Yeah, so I'm married and been married to Gillian for 26 years, and we've got 5 kids. They're aging between 6 and 23. We had a 12-year gap between numbers 3 and 4. I was sort of hoping I'd be a trendsetter, but nobody seems to be following. But that's okay. I'm comfortable with that. And we've got our eldest is married, so we've got a daughter-in-law now as well. So we love our big family, and love our kids. And I think one of the things that where we were making a decision whether we were going to have more kids after a period of time where we weren't necessarily feeling like we were in physically safe places to invite children in. We just realised just what a great joy it is, and what an opportunity it is to raise children. And it's the influence you have on those people is unlike any other influence. You know, one of the things of my job is that you do influence people, but nobody listens to me like my kids. Sometimes I wish they wouldn't listen so closely, but you know, they watch and they see who I am and they learn. And so we decided to, you know, see whether we would be blessed again with more children, and we have been twice more.
Yes, so, well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And that is definitely an area of leadership there in your family as well, because it's time for us to lift the lid, isn't it, on the fact that even leaders too can have episodes of mental health challenges, but that doesn't mean the end, that healing is possible, recovery is possible, and that's certainly true for both you and I, and that's part of our stories. Burnout is actually also a type of mental health, and that is extremely common within leadership, especially those in Christian leadership. And sometimes even the burnout then can lead to other various mental health challenges as well. So in my case, in my story, I definitely sought anything that was going to help me because I knew I needed to recover, and I'm a pretty proactive person. So I went and got the counselling, and I even trialed medications, and it was a journey and it was a challenge, and it took quite some time, but I got there in the end. Do you feel ready to share a bit of your story, Simon?
Sure, absolutely.
What happened, and then how did you recover? Because ultimately we want to be giving our listeners that hope, because there may be some listening right now that are feeling the challenge of mental health and in leadership.
Absolutely. Look, I certainly recognise now that I certainly had some anxiety throughout my life, and I think I have a better understanding of that now than I ever have. But probably the most significant incident that happened for me was sort of 5.5 years ago. We moved to Melbourne to take up a role in a growth corridor section of Melbourne where there was extraordinary opportunities as a Christian leader to be impacting people who were moving in to that area, who were looking for community and looking to be a part of that. And I was working with a fellow there who was nearing retirement, and he had some very strong opinions, and I've got fairly strong opinions as well. So I think in some ways we clashed on a variety of things, and we sort of eventually, I think we kept clashing, and so I had some anxiety in dealing with his fine-tooth comb that pointed out each of my mistakes. And look, I'm a big swing kind of guy, so I'm not a details guy. I'm a big picture, so I would get a lot of details wrong, and he was a very detailed person, and that meant that we clashed a lot. In the end, I reached a point where our relationship was pretty broken, and I was pretty down. I was quite hurt. I was feeling mentally quite hurt, and eventually I reached a point where I just wasn't able to keep going. I had to stop. My wife recognised that I had to stop, and so I experienced what was eventually classed as an injury at work. I was probably a bit like a mental breakdown, a spiritual breakdown. I was unsure whether or not what I wanted to do. I was, in some levels, I was unsafe for myself in that period of time.
Thank you for being honest and saying that, because it's very real, isn't it? Sometimes the darkness can get so deep that self-harm is something, and suicide is something that does happen to people before they get help.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think there's a fair bit of shame caught up with that kind of concept. And to be honest, I don't think there should be. I think it's better to talk about it than not. And I think the reality is that we want to be, we are real people. And when you reach a point where you've got no idea of the way forward, I think that possibility of that, if that's the only way out, you see that, you recognise that, and I certainly, with a great love for my family, was considering, well, would they be better off without me?
Oh.
And certainly I couldn't. I was thinking of, is there a way that I could not hurt them? And that was part of it. I didn't want to hurt them. I couldn't continue in the job that I was doing, and I was trying to work out, after I'd moved my family from Sydney to Melbourne, they'd gone through great changes of school, changes of jobs. How do I not affect them? How do I not impact them? But there was no way. And so
so that was driving for you to seek help when you realized that there was no way, that you couldn't hurt them if you do any self-harm. So you decided to seek some help. Yeah,
certainly. And I mean, I just wasn't functional, so I couldn't work. I was inoperative really at that point. And so I sought help from a psychologist, and I sought help, and I made clear to my employers in terms of the Melbourne diocese that I couldn't continue in this situation, and they were supportive of me in that, and that was very significant.
I think it's important for anyone who's listening who hasn't already done the mental health first aid course. I just think it's a course that absolutely everyone in the community needs to do. It's that if you're not familiar with it, anyone that's listening, the mental health first aid course, if you were talking to someone like Simon when he was in that moment, it would guide you through how to respond to him and how to help him maybe go to his GP for a referral to a psychologist. It's basically just helping everyone understand different types of mental health illnesses and not shy away from the conversations, because you may be the friend, you may be the parent, you may be the one person that the person who has a mental health issue has actually chosen to speak to. And if you're not equipped for that, you don't know what to do, that is a missed opportunity to potentially help them seek help. So I just wanted to throw that in there, Simon, in the middle of your story there, because I know that that's just such a helpful way that even as people have been listening, they may have been thinking, oh, I wouldn't know how to handle that if someone told me that was something that they were experiencing. And if that's the case, go and do this mental health first aid course. You can do it online. It's available readily in lots of different places. But Simon, do tell us the second half. So when you chose to see the psychologist, Hope did come back for you. What happened next?
Yeah, so eventually it was worked out that my situation was fell under work cover. So I was assessed by work cover, and I spent a long time talking to them, had to be interviewed a number of times about the situation, which were each in some ways pretty hard work, jobs, things to do. But again, it was about clarifying what was going on. And so it was classed that I was injured at work. And I don't need to necessarily say anything more about that, but over time I worked with a psychologist. So I was not working. We were living in a house that was attached to the church, but we didn't go to the church. We went to church somewhere else. And eventually I developed a relationship with a neighbouring parish. And because it's work cover, I needed to be reintroduced to work. So as my mental health got better, as I guess I was more I think, able to see where my worth and value came from, that my worth and value weren't found in my employer or in my the people I was working with, but in God. For me, that was really significant, to be able to sit comfortably in that place, and to be okay with who I was and who I believe God's made me to be, so being who I am. So eventually I started back doing some work. I worked for a different church, working a couple of days a week, running a midweek service and doing some preaching, which I love to do, and helping out with some just some pastoral care. And then, as the need for me to become more like back towards full time came up, we had to work out where I could work, because the unfortunate thing with ministry often is that unlike other jobs, your family come with you. And so so we needed to find somewhere where I could work, a church that we could go to that was not too far away from where my older girls were going to school. And so there was kind of a look at the map of where we were and what were the vacant parishes that brought a possibility. And so we ended up in the Yarra Ranges of Melbourne, outside of Melbourne, in a little town called Monbulk. And I was the priest in charge there. It was a small church, so small that, as I said before, we brought a quarter of the congregation in my car. And so I ended up there, and we brought life to there, and we ended up being there for 3.5 years, and the years that included COVID, which of course was a very significant thing in Melbourne itself. So we were a part of the Melbourne region, so we experienced all the lockdowns that Melbourne had. But the big thing, I think, that happened for me in that period of time, and going to this tiny church, which is a very aged congregation, was really being comfortable with the fact that as a leader, while I could have a goal of getting more people in there, my focus really needed to be on caring for the people who were in front of me and changing my understanding of what it is to be a leader. I think being comfortable with the fact that I had to reach a point where I was okay to recognise I'm a sensitive person and I am affected by other people. And I think in my head, I sort of assumed that to be a leader, I sort of needed to be this kind of unaffected, stoic type man. I am a man, but
I understand.
Yeah, but it's okay to be me, and I think they get me. So they may want someone who is this or that or something else, but they get me, and so that has its ups and downs, and there's some strengths there and there's some weaknesses. And but that's an okay thing. I think being confident that you're here to play your role, to be the person that God has made you to be, with the skills that you have now, mean that you can be content with where you are now and who you are now. It doesn't mean you need to be content to stay where you are. I was in a meeting the other week with members of my congregation, talking about our 10-year vision. We've got a 10-year vision, and I was talking to them about what the church has done in the past and what it could do in order to achieve this goal. And I just said, the great thing about a 10-year goal is we're not restricted by who we are today. We might think, well, we really need a drummer. And you might think, well, we've got nobody who can play the drums. And I think, well, in 10 years, somebody within the congregation could choose to learn the drums and, put in those 10,000 hours to become an expert. We're not restricted as we look towards the future by who we are today. But we can be content today that we are who we are today. That who we are today is who God has prepared us to be. And and as we look forward, we can say, well, how do I gain the skills that I need to gain? I know that for me, doing professional supervision, I think has given me confidence in terms of doing pastoral care. I think in part because I can just ask people questions, and it's given me that interest in people that I think I always had. I really like people. I'm a people person, even though I have some anxiety. I enjoy listening to people's stories and just being confident to be content to listen and hear and understand. And so I think if you're struggling with where you're at, then don't be afraid to go and talk to people about it. It's certainly not. I think sometimes the strength of leadership is to say, I'm not okay. It's not to say that I'm perfect, but it's to say I need help, and I'm not feeling like I'm enough, that I'm or the people around me are enough. So I think there's strength in saying I need help, and there's strength in saying perhaps I need to have a break for a while, because certainly it's not life is not a sprint. The reality was that when church there, I was the band playing guitar and singing, and the preacher and the leader, and occasionally, very occasionally, I'd have to run morning tea as well, but I try to do everything I could to avoid that. Well, I can make tea and coffee. But
well, what I'm hearing, Simon, is that you got the support you needed. You found a place where you can, love the people in front of you and continue to do the work you love to do. But I also heard a change in your thinking. You were able to approach the work, in this case, the ministry, with a different, more grounded thinking, where you weren't expecting yourself to be everything. And by adjusting those expectations of yourself, you've been able to move forward in a healthier way. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that happened was I was able to be comfortable with the point where I could say that the church get me. So we've talked about expectations, and certainly people have expectations of
very unrealistic expectations often of the leader. That we are all things to all men, that we can do it all, that we're multi-talented, which of course you are.
No, not really,
but it is hard. I mean, when people are expected to be both a good preacher in the case of a minister, and good pastorally, and good administratively, and good at people management if they have a team they're managing. It's in the business world. Everyone understands that not everybody's good at everything, and so we build teams around each other with everybody's different and varied strengths. So even a CEO is not expected to be able to do everything. That's why they have a team and a board and others advising. So it is a very common thing for ministers, particularly, to be the ones that burn out or get mental health challenges, because a lot of it is driven by the expectations that are on them in a role like that. Anyway, you just pressed my button there, so I off on a bit there. But you are a living example of something that is common, I guess is what I'm saying, and not to in any way minimize your story, but only to say that I know that there's going to be others listening who perhaps are also living a similar story. And what kind of final words would you have if there is somebody out there who's right now struggling with their own mental health challenges, or who's in leadership and struggling with all the varying different expectations and feeling the weight of that? Just what advice have you got for the listeners?
Sure. I mean, I know some people listening will have a relationship with God through Jesus, and others won't. But I think I guess as a Christian person, I want to say, and if you're a Christian person, ministering in a church or working in a job, God has put you there. Believing in a sovereign God means that you can have confidence that where you find yourself is where God has placed you. Mm-hmm. And so that idea, that thought that this church that's in front of you, get you, is what God has planned. It's what God has decided. It's what he's ordained. And so you can have confidence in that, not that you are there to be perfect or anything like that. That might be viewed positively, it might be viewed negatively, but if I'm comfortable with that, then I think that helps me to just keep moving forward.
Well, thank you for those encouraging words. We're going to need to finish up now. Thanks so much for sharing your story and for being so vulnerable with everyone. We really appreciate it. And I know that there's plenty of people out there who will have very much appreciated hearing your story today.